Okay, hi folks, this is Tyler again, and I would like to discuss something that has been really difficult for me as a new pack goat owner. And I would imagine this is probably the same way for meat goats or other livestock, brand new livestock owners. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if this pertains to all livestock, but I know that it pertains to goats in the state of Idaho. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about microchipping because we're about to microchip some of the goats here. And this is Crosby. And but let me tell you, at least from my experience, what I had to go through in order to get the microchip to have some sort of like tracking device on my goats. Now we could talk ear tags, we could talk tattoos, and there's a lot of information out there online about that. And so I'm not going to get into that, but what I am going to get into is the actual microchip, how I was getting the microchip, and all the things that it took in order to get a microchip for the goats. So keep in mind, I don't do meat goats, we don't breed, we don't do anything, but I own 4 pack goats, and I just want to be able to put a microchip in them so that if they get lost one day, we can track them, and we could also scan that thing if we get pulled over at some check station or something and somebody wants to see where the goats are coming from and where their premise ID. So that's the first deal. The first thing that I had to do was go to the state of Idaho, and we basically fill out a form for the state of Idaho called the Premise Identification Number Request. I tell them who I am, how many goats that I own or the livestock that I have, and they come back typically about a week later with a PIN number. That's my premises ID. That tells them that I am a goat owner at this location. I then take that premise ID and I contact the USDA or the United States Department of Agriculture, and I ask for a scrapie flock identification number. Now, basically, scrapies, or the USDA came up with some regulations saying that they want to eradicate scrapie, and scrapie is a disease in the nervous system that is incurable, and it can go through large amounts of flocks very quickly. And if a goat does get scrapie, they want to be able to track that back to a place, hence the premise ID. So they link these two numbers together. So you got your premise ID, then you get your flock ID from the USDA, Department of Agriculture. They came back and they gave me a flock ID. Those two numbers then get linked, and I call a microchip company, a company dealing with tracking devices like microchips. The particular company that I went with is Microchip ID. You can find these things online. Personally, I got these from Mark Warnke. He sells these little chip readers, but the chips themselves have to come from the company. Now, here's the tricky part, and I will show you these microchips. They come in a bag. I ordered 5 of them because I got 5 goats, and this is I think the smallest amount that I could order other than just one. And I'll tell you what I did wrong the first time. I called the company. They asked me, hey, do you own goat? What kind of animal are you going to try to microchip? And I said, well, I own goats. And the lady said, well, those, that seems like they're fun and they're pets. And I said, oh yeah, they're kind of like pets. Well, what they did was they sent me pet chips, pet microchips, like for a dog or a cat or other animals that your vet might put in an animal. So that was what I did wrong. What you need to do is you need to tell the microchip company that they are livestock. You would think that this company would assume that, but as a new goat owner and as something that I'm doing new, I did not know to tell them, listen, I want the microchip specifically for livestock. That is an 840 microchip, or a USDA approved 840 chip. And that chip is, you go back into the regulations for USDA, and that is the chip that is specifically for livestock. So let's just recap this. You first get a premise ID, or at least this is how it is in our state of Idaho. You first get a premise ID. Take that premise ID. You go get your flock, your Scrapey's flock ID, and that's registering that with the USDA. They link those together. You give that information over to the microchip company, and you ask for the 840 USDA chip. They then send you very specific microchips. You assign the chip to which goat you want at the time that you put the chip in, and then you go ahead and microchip them. If you put the pet microchip in your goats or in your livestock, when that chip gets scanned, it doesn't go to the correct list. It's not going to link to your Scrapey's and your flock ID. Or your premise ID. So it's very important that you get the correct chip, the 840 USDA chip. So anyway, there might be some of that might be a little bit inconsistent or different than what you're used to, but this is what I had to go to in order to get these microchips. The next video is going to be us microchipping the goats, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. We're going to put them in the tail web because I do have a La Mancha and I want them to all be consistent, so we're all going to go in the tail web. So any questions, comments, put them below, and I'd love to kind of field any questions, or at least, I'm still learning, so go ahead and tell me what I'm doing wrong, but that's what I did wrong, and then I had to correct it and go back and get the correct microchips. And so yeah, that's my experience. Let's get to microchipping the goats.